Pikmin. It's a cute, wholesome little franchise where adorable little plant people help out a lost spaceman make his way home. Surely there's not an ounce of dark lore to be found across the series, right? Wrong. You see, Pikmin actually harbours plenty of dark secrets that lurk just beneath its jovial surface. From the lingering history of nuclear warfare that plagues the land you explore to the creepy legend behind one of the franchise's key boss fights, it's time to unveil the dark truth behind Pikmin's disturbing lore. Let's start with a little history lesson to set the scene for the franchise's backstory. Pikmin's 1, 2 and 3 all take place on the same planet, which goes unnamed in the first two games but takes on the title of PNF 404 when the Copite people arrive during the events of the third game. Anyway, this supposedly uncharted planet is actually a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and potentially one that could actually be a future version of our own blue planet, Earth. As our central protagonist, Captain Olimin, explores his new surroundings, it's clear, especially from the first two games, that this is a world that humans have left their mark on. You spend a good deal of Pikmin's 1 and 2 hoarding and scavenging old relics from a forgotten human past. And by relics I mean, Duracell batteries. But crucially, Olimin never actually encounters any humans in his expeditions, and the one potential truth behind this points to a devastating conclusion. Humanity has died out as the result of a worldwide nuclear devastation. Okay, so that's a pretty big extrapolation for this cutesy strategy series, but there's one key piece of evidence that helps back it up, and that's the presence of the Geiger counter. This innocuous little device is found in the Forest of Hope during the events of the first game, and its use completely confounds poor Olimin, who admits he has no idea what it does. Well, as we know in the real world, a Geiger counter is used to measure levels of radioactivity, much like those found in the wake of a nuclear detonation. The device will give off little clicks and noises to alert the user whenever they've discovered any radiation, and this is exactly what the Geiger counter in the first Pikmin game does. The ship's log details that the noisy gauge is always letting off spontaneous clicks and buzzes. It can be kind of annoying, and so it's not too much of a jump to assume that this uncharted planet, possibly Earth, is still suffering from nuclear devastation. It sure does explain whatever the hell this thing is. However, PNF 404 goes through something of a drastic makeover in the third Pikmin game, which sees the planet sporting a giant landmass, a supercontinent that is actually based on the Pangaea Proxima projections of what our Earth could look like in 250 million years' time. So with a little suspension of disbelief, we can easily extrapolate that PNF 404 is potentially the remnants of our own planet, just millions of years into the future. And this devastating revelation is the backdrop to the gentle garden vibes of the Pikmin franchise. Okay, now we move on to the tragic tale of Captain Olimin, the offshoot of our good pal Olimin in the bad ending of the original Pikmin. You can trigger this grim alternative ending if you fail to get the 25 necessary pieces of the SS Dolphin before your allocated 30 days of air supply run out. In this instance, Olimin will attempt to take off and escape the planet with his half-repaired spaceship, which will inevitably crash land back down to the surface. While this doesn't outright kill the poor captain, it still pretty much condemns him to a slow, agonising suffocation on the planet's surface. But that is only the beginning of this disturbing end to an otherwise jovial game. You see, Olimin's loyal Pikmin carry him back to one of the onions, tripod-like pollinators that produce Pikmin, and he's sucked up into the onion before being ejected as a seed, which is affectionately termed the Olimin. Only here's the grim part. There's no one to pluck him from the ground. So presumably he'll just gestate there in the ground forever. Not sure which one I'd prefer, to be honest, but I guess a straight death seems preferable to being buried half alive as a weird plant hybrid thing. Anyway, if you finish the game normally, you'll completely miss this ending. So let's just pretend it's all some weird fever dream and move on to more pleasant pastures in the second game. Or then again, maybe not. Okay, here comes the big one. The true villain of Pikmin is actually the unassuming goofball that is Louie. Don't you fall for his act, this lad is a stone-cold sociopath. Let me explain. Alright, so our lad Louie is introduced in Pikmin 2 as Olimin's supposedly hapless and harmless teammate, sent alongside the aforementioned captain back to the planet from the original Pikmin to scavenge treasures to bail their company Hocotate Freight out of extreme debt. You see, while Olimin has been surviving the dangers of PNF 404, Louie has been taking care of a critical mission for the freight business. In his first ever job for the company, he's tasked with transporting an expensive shipment of rare golden pickpick carrots. Only mid-delivery, he's supposedly ambushed by, and I'm quoting in his own words here, a ravenous space bunny, who promptly gobbles up all the extremely valuable space carrots, which, as we've established, throws the company into crippling debt. And so that's the unassuming pretense that kicks off Pikmin 2's adventure back to PNF 404. Only here's the rub. Louie is a grade A fibber. As you'll learn if you complete all 30 challenge missions without killing a single Pikmin, you'll unlock the ominous sounding cutscene, Louie's Dark Secret. This little vignette actually showcases the full devious truth behind Louie's escapade with the quote-unquote ravenous space bunny. You see, our lad Louie has completely made up the fictional rabbit and his proclivity for blingy vegetables, and unsurprisingly has feasted on the carrots himself. And without a care in the world for the dire consequences of his actions, the lanky liar throws his company, and as a result our earnest hero Olimar, right under the bus. But in all honesty, this is only really the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Louie's crimes and misdemeanors within the Pikmin franchise. Yep, that's because Louie goes through something of a character reinvention in the wake of Pikmin 2, which sees him double down on the hints of his strange behaviour. At the end of Pikmin 2, as Olimar makes his way back to pay off the outstanding debt, he realises that his companion Louie isn't with him. With the debt repaid, Olimar and the president of the Hocketate Freight Company return to the planet to rescue their hapless co-worker. They find him atop a hoard of treasure that turns out to be the head of the intimidating Titan Jovial, a large spider-like boss creature that rounds out the epilogue of Pikmin 2. During the boss fight, as Olimar drastically uses any and all Pikmin in his disposal to destroy the Titan Jovial and save his colleague Louie, Louie just sits atop the giant bug smugly taking the epic fight in. And here's the quirky little detail that turns Louie onto an even darker path. You see, after the Titan Jovial fight, you can find records in both Olimar's journals and the sales pitch for your hoard of treasure that allude to the fact that Louie might have actually been controlling the ferocious bug in an attempt to kill off poor Olimar. Olimar wonders, could he have been controlling that beast all along? While the sales pitch states that Louie somehow managed to hijack a colossal insect's brain, and even goes a little further, ominously mentioning that nobody knows what thoughts lurk in his mind. Either way, Louie returns a changed man, or Hocketate, or whatever they are, and this is reflected in two interesting little details. The first is that Louie now insists that he's called the King of Bugs, which totally doesn't sound like the title of a lad that hijacked a giant killer spider. Whoa, not at all, no. While the second has slightly more sinister implications. You see, pre-Titan Jovial, Louie has a weight of 1 unit, or 1 Pikmin, but following his strange encounter, he now weighs 5 units, as confirmed by his appearance in Pikmin 3. Now we can only speculate here, but as is established with Louie's character, he has a penchant for cooking and eating the bug-like creatures found in the games. So one can reasonably extrapolate that Louie might have feasted on the Titan Jovial in some capacity during his time with the giant bug, and taken on bizarre new qualities that have changed him both physically and mentally. Obviously there's no way of confirming this short of getting inside Shigeru Miyamoto's head, but it definitely provides some food for thought. But it all goes a long way to explaining his erratic behaviour in Pikmin 3, where he actively antagonises the core trio of Alpha, Brit and Charlie, despite their attempts to help and rescue him. Finally, there's the Japanese legend of the Umibozu that interweaves itself throughout the lore of Pikmin, and specifically with the third game's final boss, the Plasm Wraith. The Plasm Wraith makes its entrance in Pikmin 3, where it promptly kidnaps our good mate Captain Olimar, who's back on PNF 404 to scavenge some more treasures. While it's initially quite playful with Olimar, the Wraith soon turns violent and becomes hostile to anyone that tries to rescue Olimar, who it's fiercely protective over. Olimar is eventually rescued by Alpha, Brit and Charlie, much to the annoyance of the Wraith. Anyway, since Pikmin 3's release, it has long been theorised that the Plasm Wraith and its kidnapping of Olimar was inspired by the myth of the Umibozu, a monk-like spirit that lures seafaring ships off their course before shipwrecking them and kidnapping their captains. And there are a handful of key pieces of evidence that point towards this being the unnerving truth. While the behaviour of the Plasm Wraith is eerily similar to the legend of the Umibozu, its connection to the mythical sea monk actually belies something even more sinister. You see, across the original 3 Pikmin games, there's a range of mysterious accidents that tie the Plasm Wraith and more broadly PNF 404 closer to the Japanese legend. In each game in the franchise, there are a number of instances where ships coming into the orbit of PNF 404 suffer catastrophic crashes, or shipwrecks if you will. Obviously, there's Olimar's original crash in the first Pikmin, but more notably there are a handful of crash landings in Pikmin 3 under the watchful eye of the Plasm Wraith. The Koppites crash land at the beginning of the game, but it's also revealed that Olimar's ship has crashed upon arrival at PNF 404, before he's kidnapped by the Wraith. The ending of the game further alludes to the fact that the pattern of crashes on the planet is not a series of unfortunate accidents, instead suggesting some intrinsic link between PNF 404 and the Plasm Wraith. So there you have it. Nintendo's wholesome strategy game has a deep, dark core. You just have to scratch a little bit beneath the surface to unveil it. If you're a fan of video game lore, please make sure to subscribe as we have new lore-based video every Monday. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.